keeping moving, I'd like to bring up the next speaker, my friend Tomás, who is the CEO of Hereworks from Ireland, where they redefine intelligent built environments and provide smart building innovations internationally. Tomás, thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Normally I'd get everyone to stand up, but I know you're all awake after listening to Eric. Fabulous speaker. Bob asked me here, actually on the back of an article that I wrote for the Smart Building magazine on this topic of retrofit. And we actually debated it a bit in Barcelona this year. And Bob made it very clear that he did not like the term retrofit. He felt it had negative connotations. And so he suggested the term future fit. And I quickly stole it. So I can't take credit for the title of the talk. So a question to you all just to think about there. When you think about retrofit, do you picture compromise, a kind of patchwork quilt, or making do? Well, I'm here, I suppose, to argue the opposite. Retrofit, for me, is the only credible path to future-fit buildings in Europe, because the future isn't being built out there, it's already occupied. You've probably all heard that stat that 80% of the buildings we will occupy in 2050 already exist. And in the twin transition world that we were talking about earlier, this digital plus sustainable, the buildings that are the buildings that win are the ones that can change fast and at scale. For years, how do I make this work? Play, is it? Yeah. For years, the answer, I suppose, to an aging building has been that idea of moving. Just move HQ, a new shiny tower. But that world has really changed because the cost of construction and fit-out costs have really exploded across, not just Europe, but across the world. And premium space is scarce, it's expensive, and now it's a double hit because you're actually running 2 locations for 18 to 24 months. So organizations are more and more staying put and renovating instead of relocating. And that decision really creates massive opportunity because the building you're already in is full of value if you can unlock it. A high-end 150,000 square foot building, say, in any of the European capitals, Paris, say, might cost somewhere between 16 and 17 million per year. So over a large construction program, that could be 2 years. That's 30 million plus of rent alone. So it's not fit out, it's not churn, it's not productivity loss, all those other things that organizations have to worry about is purely on rent. So that really flips retrofit from a nice idea into a board level strategy. This article was in Ireland's Sunday Business Post, not last Sunday, the Sunday before, and it just caught my attention. Now bear in mind, the Business Post it's not a tech publication, it's not a sustainability section, this was mainstream business press. And it says the quiet part out loud, the market is splitting, this idea of prime versus aging stock, and the gap is widening, which means that doing nothing is no longer neutral, it's a decision now. And if we accept that, then retrofit stops being a compromise. It becomes that path to future fit and the hidden ROI inside our existing buildings. If we press the right button, it'll probably help. The surprising bit is that retrofitting smart building technologies that Eric talked about into existing buildings actually delivers a higher ROI than in new buildings. And that's because new buildings really they start from a decent baseline. So you can optimize, but the gains over time are marginal. Existing buildings, though, they leak money in silence. Systems are fighting each other, lights still behave like there's no off switch. Comfort and complaints are constant. The root cause is unclear and energy is really invisible until the bill arrives. So smart retrofit really hits the hardest in our existing buildings. In these environments, tools like, I keep hitting the wrong button. So tools like fault detection and diagnostic systems, that kind of supervisory layer that sits on top of your BMS systems, space analytics, and modern lighting control, they have immediate impact. Like, it's not unusual to see, I think I saw the figure earlier there, that kind of 25% savings on HVAC, but just actually managing things correctly. A 35% on lighting. Plus you're getting fewer hot, cold calls. And there's a magic ingredient, I suppose, really, that Retrofit gives us, and that's it before and after data. So there's no more kind of we think, we were talking about ROI earlier, Nicholas was, with existing buildings, it's we measured. 2,500 parts per million of CO2. This is what we were measuring in a building that was only 3 years old in, there's my slides up there, in Dublin. Now, cognitive performance reduces at about 1,400 parts per million. This was a training session that was happening week after week. It was 3 hours long. There was 25 people in that room. The room was simply designed for 12 people, and the HVAC system couldn't keep up. Now, for those of you not familiar with that number, 2,500 parts per million, it would be very hard to even stay awake in that room, let alone actually learn anything. And then you have, obviously, the health concerns of being exposed to that for 3 hours. That equated to €7,500 of wasted wages, essentially. Now multiply that. That was happening week after week. Now the really interesting thing about this was that we could also see from the building data that it was a recurring meeting. We could also see that there was another room on the very same floor that actually could house that number of people. Now it wasn't quite as crowded as this room. It was simply, so it wasn't as obvious that the room was overcrowded for the people in it, except for the fact that they were falling asleep. But the point here is that by actually collecting that data, to mitigate that was zero cost. It was literally just educating people, having booking system rules that actually say, well, number one, if that many people in the room, actually, you need to move to a different room. You need to book a different space. Actually, just like having access to the data. But the point here is this was also a new building. It was 3 years old. So new does not necessarily mean healthy. What actually drew the attention to this as well was that there was an attempt to push the HVAC system beyond what it was capable of. There was things put into manual mode. So again, you had HVAC systems trying and working harder. So again, new does not necessarily mean efficient either. So Retrofit shifts that conversation from promises to evidence. So the baseline conditions already exist, inefficiencies are measurable, and improvements are provable. And really that matters because we know CFOs and boards don't fund vibes, they fund outcomes. Return to office really changes everything as well. You can't mandate people back into workplaces that frustrate them or into misery, as the slide puts it. You have to design environments that people actually want to be in. And it's not always the big stuff. So it's those micro interactions, the air quality issues, the temperature stability, lighting comfort, acoustics, the ease of finding a room. When you get to that room, does the technology work? When I get to that hot desk, is the cable there to actually connect my laptop? Smart Retrofit turns these daily frictions into measurable improvements. And at the risk of repeating what Nicholas said, actually half the rest of my presentation is basically Nicholas's. He talked about JLL's 330-300 rule. This is pretty old at this stage. It's probably 9 or 10 years old. But it's a good reminder, as Nicholas put it. It basically says that for every €3 we spend on utilities, on energy, per square foot in a building, we'll spend €30 on rent or on lease costs, and we'll spend 300 on payroll, on the people inside it. Now, the buildings we work with are purely there for one reason, and that's to house the people inside it. And sometimes we forget that. So if we can remove those frictions I talked about a minute ago, and we talked about the difficulty of ROI, a lot of what we do in workplace experience is around this fractional ROI. All those things that I mentioned, from air quality to lighting to actually getting to a desk and it actually working, they all contribute to this idea of fractional ROI, and they all add up. So it's easy to see that a 10% increase in employee experience will have a 100-time gain as compared to actually a 10% reduction in energy spend. So smart building, it isn't a tech project, it really is a business strategy and our business impact. That's really what it can have here. And a lot of retrofit programs fails. Again, Eric touched on this as well, or they grow stagnant, inefficient in themselves for one reason. People rush to that shiny layer. And this is probably my pet hate in the smart building world. Time and time again, you hear this, I want a smart building app. I want sensors, I want IoT. And they do that before fixing the fundamentals. And what you end up with is a patchwork quilt of tech owned by different departments within the business. They don't speak the same language, and there's nobody responsible for actioning those insights. And in fact, often there's nobody there to actually even understand the data in itself. Oh, and by the way, you've also increased your cyber risk. So retrofit isn't about adding gadgets or smart building apps. Retrofit is really about rewriting that building's DNA. Now, I think we should have a competition as for the best definition of a smart building, because this is the third one you see, or maybe the fourth one you see today. So I'm going to use this one. A smart building is a building that uses technology and the data it generates to improve the outcomes of that building. And I'm going to rob, actually, a couple of sentences from Matthew Marston's book. He's robbed enough from me over the years, so it'll be all right. He says that a smart building should be responsive to occupant needs. It should satisfy the aims of the organization. And I'm going to use a different word there, impact. And it should meet the long-term aspirations of society. But really what I want you to notice is nowhere in there does it say anything about apps, software, IoT, or sensors. And in fact, a lot of what we do in the smart building industry, or certainly in Hereworks, is that we're actually connecting to the systems that already exist in a building. So in any existing building, there's a BMS system. There's likely lighting control in any building that's been built in the last 20 years anyway. So it's actually removing all that data from the silos, connecting it, and then being able to make decisions based on the power of that combined data. And we say at Hereworks, a bit like Matthew, is that a smart building should improve human experience, it should improve sustainability, it should increase space utilization, and it should reduce maintenance costs. And then cybersecurity. Again, Nicholas said it keeps them up at night. It couldn't be more than true. Every single device we have in a building management system, is a potential backdoor into that building. I think when people hear, and I don't know, obviously this is somewhat an IT conference, so people are quite aware of what cyber is about. But a lot of people think, cyber, that's nothing to do with me. And really, we should really talk about cybersecurity in terms of business impact. Never has the threat been more real. We've seen Mythos come out from Anthropic, and then them saying they weren't releasing it. They were going to release it to some of their friends first because the damage it could do to the software industry. You can be sure that if it exists from Anthropic, there's other tools out there that are well capable of doing the same, and in the wrong hands, they could do serious damage. I don't know if you heard that story about the guy, I think he was a French guy actually, but he was playing around, he wanted to control he had one of these DJI vacuum cleaners, the ones that go around automatically and clean your floor, and he wanted to control it with his PlayStation controller. I'm not sure why, but anyway, he went on to Claude and he started messing about, and Claude came back and said, yeah, okay, I've done that now. Which one of your 7,000 DJI vacuum cleaners would you like to control? And he suddenly had access, I think the number was around 7,000 in 24 different countries. He even had access to the camera on their device. Now, he wasn't a bad actor. He obviously went to DJI and he told them. He obviously quickly went to the media too and told them. But you can see, like, especially in existing buildings, we have such old systems that we didn't consider cybersecurity really, even 5 years ago, we didn't consider it the same risk as we do now. Our head of R&D and innovation worked for a previous company where they had a cyber attack. It was a simple attack. It was actually an attack on the digital signage was compromised. They didn't know at the time, is it just the digital signage, is it everything else? So suddenly the panic sets in. Okay, right, we need to shut everything down, we need to close everything down, send everyone home, leave your laptops on the table. They lost a week of work and they destroyed all the laptops in the process as well. So the cost, the business impact of something, it was only a tiny little breach. Somebody got access to the digital signage, but the ripple effect that can have. So it can be small, but it has a massive impact on your business. So it's a huge risk, and again, it's right that it keeps Nicholas up at night. Future Fit, again, is all about strong digital foundations. A future-proof ontology, a clean naming scheme, vendor-agnostic independent data layer, and secure integration architecture. Again, a lot of boring stuff there. But really the point is that everything needs to be aligned as well across the business. So from the different stakeholders in your business, workplace, HR, IT, facility management, sustainability. When you do this right, data flows, systems interoperate, analytics become trustworthy, ESG reporting becomes automated, and upgrades, importantly, don't require starting again. This is actually digital sovereignty at the building level. You own your data and not your vendor. We call ourselves at Hereworks a digital building contractor. Now, the best analogy for that is if you imagine you might have a general contractor or a main contractor who would build your physical building. Well, we'll do the same for your digital building. So we'll take a design from somebody like Kevin here. We'll finish the contractor design portions. We'll assign project managers. We'll assign engineers. We'll employ specialist subcontractors to deliver aspects. And then ultimately, we'll take the risk. So it's one contractual relationship with Hereworks and the client, and then we'll deliver the building at the end. And then the biggest piece of actually what we do now is the aftercare, actually helping the clients understand what happens to that data. But just to hammer home that fact, like a good physical building, a digital building starts with strong foundations, and that is your independent data layer, your ontology, so that kind of dictionary or the relationship between everything, the language, the naming scheme, all those basics. If you do nothing else with your smart building, start there. And only then, when you understand the needs of the organization into the future, should you start thinking about additional technologies, sensors, IoT, and then your software layers on top, your single pane of glass or your digital twin to actually take control of all that data. And then we wrap that all up with managed services. And again, this is probably the biggest, this is where the value really starts to happen. It's after day one. And then again, cybersecurity, that ongoing threat detection, vulnerability management as the building matures. It doesn't have to be a huge rip and replace. It doesn't have to be part of a huge, deep retrofit or construction scheme, construction project. In reality, smart retrofit can be light touch. We can connect and normalize existing siloed data. We can add targeted sensors where you need truth. We can use nice wireless systems, PoE, wireless mesh, all these technologies. There's loads of interesting products on the market at the moment. With XY Senses, new space analytics sensor. You can have 90 sensors off one data point there and 3 power sources. We've LoRa for wireless communications. We've fault detection diagnostic systems that sit on top of your BMS system. 100,000, 150,000 square foot building, maybe 100,000 to implement, but the savings, as I say, can be up to 25, 35%. Our own product, which is Hereworks Solve, which is we basically place these sensors around the building. They're probably the most cost-effective sensors you'll deploy, and they basically create two-legged human sensors. Again, like I suppose a gateway drug to smart buildings. But the beauty with all these systems is pace. You can prove value early, and then you can scale it. So you're getting meaningful change in weeks and months, not 3 years waiting for a new HQ. And of course, there's the uncomfortable truth. You saw it in the article earlier. Buildings that don't adopt digital infrastructure risk becoming these stranded assets. ESG reporting tightens, climate targets harden, and cyber threat becomes board-level decisions. Under the EU's Energy Performance Buildings Directive, obviously we've targets for 2030, 2033. So the cost of retrofitting is becoming, the cost of not retrofitting is becoming greater than the cost of retrofitting itself. So to Bob's question, is it retrofit or is it future fit? And I suppose it's retrofit if it's a paint job, because it's pointless. But if retrofit is really an operating system update, a new data backbone, independent data layer, secure integration with measurable outcomes, then retrofit is future fit. And it really is the only credible path, because the next 5 years will be defined not by the buildings we build, but by the buildings that we transform. So if you take nothing else but this away from my presentation, this helps Europe win on every front, from a digital standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint, but really, to me, and again, back to JLL's rule, it's for our sovereign enterprise to really thrive. And again, that hits the bottom line, it's business impact, and that really is no more than the war in Iran. That's what will really drive sustainability and retrofit in the built environment. So, measure reality. Don't make assumptions. Measure comfort, measure occupants, obviously measure energy, but measure complaints as well. What are the people saying in the building? Build the digital backbone, the ontology, iterate and scale. So prove the value early and then roll it out across portfolios. That's retrofit for future fit. I'm Tomás. Thank you very much. There's my LinkedIn. I'll be around. We'll take questions later, I think, is it?